Hey, what's up? This is Harry Wagner from Harry's Situations, and today I want to talk to you once again about my 1948 Willys CJ2A. So we did a video on this Jeep about 2 years ago. I had owned it for about a year at the time. I didn't have a ton of money tied up in it. I had a decent amount of time in things like rewiring it. I did get new axles for it. You know, they're not Dynatrac crate axles, so they weren't crazy expensive, but they were rebuilt CJ5 axles. Otherwise, you know, I drained the transmission and transfer case, got the engine to run, and that was about it. Bang for the buck was off the charts. Now, it is very much on the charts. In fact, on the low end of the chart, I would argue. So I've spent a bunch of money. There's things I would do differently. We'll get to all of that. But first, let's talk about the upgrades I've made, what I like and what I don't like. So keep watching. One of my biggest complaints when I got this Jeep was that it blew smoke like a fog machine at a Skrillex concert. So it was locked up when I got it. This Jeep had been sitting in a field for 30 years. My friend Brad and I put Marvel's Mist Oil in the cylinders and we just kind of worked at it, got it to turn over and to run, but the rings were pretty much gone. So we yarded the engine out, took it to a machine shop, hoping to just get it re-ringed. They disassembled the engine. I got to pay $700 for that, and they told me that none of the parts were usable. And I could pay them $8,000 for a new engine. Now, I wish they had just said, we don't want to do it, because when I hear I need to pay $8,000 for an 80 horsepower engine, that's what that tells me. Now, there are a couple options out there to rebuild these Flatfender engines who are very highly regarded. They include Jimmy Strauss Motors, who is near Sacramento in Northern California. He does a bunch of really nice restorations. Also Chuck Bremer out of Arizona. He builds engines for most of the Go Devil Run guys. We talked about that in the last time we talked about the Flatfender 2. Those guys are like purists about these. They want them all to be super original. Chuck Bremer is the guy they use. Now, both of these places told me it would take about 6 months to get an engine and cost about $4,000. Some quick math tells us that's about $50 a horsepower. Now, if they told me it was going to be $2,000 in 6 months or $4,000 to get one now, I might have been able to handle it, but it was just a tough pill to swallow. So instead, I took 6 months to find an engine that cost $2,000, and it ran about the same as the one that I pulled out. If I had it to do over again, I would just run thicker oil in this and keep it. I had already invested in the transmission, the transfer case, and the axles. We'll get to that in a little bit, but really, the engine rebuild was not worth the money. Live and learn. When I got this Jeep, I talked about putting a different drivetrain in, but my friends dissuaded me from doing that because it was so complete. It had the engine and the training and T case and the axles. And they said, if you want to do that, just start with a tub and a frame. I kind of wish I had gone that way. I think it would work better and cost less. Obviously, it wouldn't have the same vintage feel, but I think you could put a Toyota drivetrain in a Flatfender. It's certainly been done before. It's not a new idea, but it works pretty darn good. You can see the gearing is a lot lower now than it used to be. It's helpful when crawling. Speaking of Toyotas, I am a Toyota guy. You know, my first real rock crawler was a Toyota pickup with Marlin Crawler dual ultimate setup, 223-to-1 low range, and I really like that control. You could kind of pick your line. You didn't have to spin the tires and slide side to side and help you keep the body straight. I like lower gearing than probably a lot of folks out there who maybe come from Jeeps or other stuff where they're not geared as low as Toyotas. Transmission, however, I think was worth the money. So when I picked this Jeep up, I drained the transmission and transfer case. Water came out of both of them. I just put new fluid in them and they worked okay. These have a 3-speed, it's a T90 transmission, and this was a T90A with a 3-to-1 first gear. My friend Vern Simons built me a T90C that has a 3.3-to-1 first gear, so 10% lower. It's a really easy upgrade. The transmission needed to be rebuilt anyway, so I think that was a great way to go. A lot of guys will put T18s in these, which have a 6-to-1 first gear, so I mean twice as low. The gearing is super low, That is honestly a great upgrade, but it's not exactly original. It doesn't fit real well. You have to cut out the tranny tunnel. The length's a little different, so there's some changes you have to make. But if you're looking to go rock crawling, it's a good option. You know, it's funny, I've taken my Ford through this trail. It's a totally different experience in that than it is in this. This feels like you're cheating. I mean, it's so much smaller and more nimble, but also so much easier to see out of, especially with the windshield down. You know, it's Vern says, you don't ride in a Flatfender, you ride on a Flatfender. Ain't that the truth? Back behind the transmission, I've still got the Dana 18, Spicer 18 transfer case. Now, when I added that lower first gear to the transmission, it's still only a 3-speed, so the split between first and second got larger. As a result, I added a Spicer Overdrive to the back of the transfer case, and that's synchronized. It allows me to actually split between first and second gear with that overdrive, or also in third going down the road, kind of lower the RPMs a little bit. It's been a good upgrade for the road. If you're just running these things on the trail, which is all I do, I probably wouldn't spend the money again, to be honest, but Advanced Adapters makes a really nice part. It's worked really well. No complaints other than I don't necessarily need it. Also from Advanced Adapters, I ordered a rebuild kit for the Spicer 18 transfer case, and they offer 3.15 to 1 low range gears. So the factory gears are 2.42 to 1 in low range, so that's a pretty significant improvement. They're not particularly cheap. They don't just drop in. You have to do some modifications to the case in order for them to work. And I went to my friends at Axaline here in Reno. They did all that work for me. The end result is great, but honestly, I don't think it's worth the money. I think I would have just done the T90C gear cluster for that lower first gear, and otherwise just called it good. So you may recall, I don't have locking differentials in this Jeep. I'm running Powertrax Grip Pros front and rear, which are a gear-driven limited slip. And the reason I did that is I really think it helps with the turning to not have a locker. Even in the back, both tires want to turn exactly the same amount, then keeps you going straight. This allows you to turn a little better. It does make the steering easier, not having a locker in the front. So, they don't completely lock up, but if you drag the brakes, they work pretty darn good. I don't have any complaints. It's going to go everywhere I want to take it with these Grip Pros. Now, Vern Simons, who built this transmission, he told me, if you want lower gearing, you just need smaller tires. But that was a tough pill to swallow. I couldn't do it. Oh boy, this seemed like such a good idea. I don't know that I've ever put smaller tires on anything. I always want bigger tires. So I'm still running the same 32-inch Nitto Trail Grappler side-by-side tires I had originally on this. I really like the look. They're narrow, they're pretty lightweight, and they work wonderfully on the trail. This video is actually brought to you by Nitto. If you like what we're doing here, please subscribe to the Driving Line channel so you don't miss any of this content in the future. A lot of folks have sweated me because I don't have seat belts in this, I don't have a roll cage, and they never came with those things. I know my limits. I try and remain cautious in this. I don't get wild in it. I think if you are going to get wild, you definitely want seat belts and a roll cage, if not just a roll bar. But that's not really my intent with this vehicle. I've got other stuff I could do that with. So in the last video we made, the winch was on the Jeep, but it wasn't working. So now I've got this new motor from Brennan Metcalf. It's all wired up, and it works. It's noisy. It's not the quietest thing in the world, but it works. I don't think these old spur-driven winches were ever quiet, even when they were new. So here's a great example of where the lower gears are gonna help me out getting through here. I used to have to use momentum, but now I can crawl a little better, have more control, be a little smoother. Stall. Guess they're still not low enough. One of the nice things about the Spicer 18 transfer case is that with the offset outputs, you're able to run that overdrive on the back, but also the outputs are lower than they would be if you had a straight through design like most modern transfer cases. The advantage there is with the short wheelbase, it really helps keep the driveline angle pretty reasonable. Now the downside is that transfer case hangs down pretty low and robs ground clearance. So Brennan Metcalf makes a skid plate you can add to the stock stamped Crossmember to add more protection to it. I went a little different route. My friends at Rockhound Off-Road, they've done a bunch of work on this Jeep. They wired it, they did the steering, which we're gonna get into in a little bit, but they also built me this custom Crossmember. It provides great protection. It's almost 2 inches higher than the factory Crossmember. So that's like going from a 32 to a 35. And they were able to knock it out really quickly. So they have a manufacturing branch now, RHI Manufacturing, and they've got a laser machine in-house. They were able to prototype this and get it built for me, very reasonably priced as well, and they did it in a hurry. I can't say enough good things about them. This was a prototype. They made some revisions. They have a cover now to protect the clutch mechanism underneath the vehicle, but otherwise you can call them up and get one of these for your own Flatfender. It's kind of wild that this is how it is after I've spent a bunch of money on lower gear. So I think if we do the math now, 3.3 times 3.15 works out to about 10, and then the gears and the diffs are 5/38, so 55 to 1 roughly is what the crawl ratio is now. I think, in something like my Ford where you got a big block and a ton of off idle torque, you can get away with that. And this thing that doesn't make a ton of torque, it's still could stand to be lower, but there's not an easy way to do that unless you want to add a T18. Now I mentioned steering upgrades. This is one place where the purists from the Go Devil run would definitely run me out of town because I added Toyota Prius parts to my Willys Flatfender. Traditionally, people would add Saginaw steering boxes to these Jeeps, and that's a great option, but it's involved. You have to add an accessory drive for the pump and a new pulley and a new belt. You have to route all that to a steering box that's on the front of the frame. So it's pretty involved, and it doesn't keep that original look. So while I'm not too concerned about what the Go Devil guys think, I do want to keep this Jeep looking original, and the Prius uses electric steering. So it's actually in line ahead of all this other steering components, and it just reduces the effort. It adds more torque into the steering system. I'm really pleased with how it works. One of my biggest complaints before on the trail was that in the rocks in particular, you just couldn't turn the wheels. You could see the line you wanted, but it didn't matter. It would bind up and you couldn't put the Jeep where you wanted it to be. That's less of an issue now. But like every upgrade, there are pros and cons to it. So while this looks original and it's reduced steering effort, I'm adding torque upstream into all these small components, the Ross steering box, the bell crank, all of these other pretty small, pretty fragile components. So if you think of something like hydraulic assist, which is popular on rock crawlers, I mean, that's at the very end of the steering system. So it's typically on the tie rod and the axle housing and reduces pressure on things like the steering box and everything else upstream, where this is inputting torque right off the bat into all these small components. How well will it hold up? I mean, everything's been rebuilt, so far so good, but we'll see how it stands the test of time. There's a lot of guys that have helped me build this. Been a great source of knowledge, not just for Simons, but Ian Wilgeblad that puts on the Go Devil run, Eric Filar, formerly of Motive Gear, he helped me a lot. He's a Flatfender guru. Robert Keller out in Florida, Ryan Miller in Arizona, Dane Schroff out in Georgia. He's become a real guru on these things. He built the carb on this and helped me quite a bit. Have you ever had a project that spiraled out of control? Comment below and let me know what tips you have to keep a project on track and on budget. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching this Harry Situations video on the Driving Line channel. Driving Line has all sorts of great content creators, and they're dropping new content almost daily. You're definitely going to want to subscribe so you don't miss any of it in the future. And we'll see you out on the trail. That was easy.